We're going to be talking about Japanese martial arts. So as you know, Japanese like to bow a lot. So there's a lot of etiquette involved in our art. My good friend Kabir has come along today, and I'm very grateful for him showing up. Excuse me. He has trained in two martial arts. Tae Kwon Do, he trained for 11 years in Taekwondo, and got to Nidan, second degree black belt, and more recently he's trained in Aikido and is first kyu in Aikido. First kyu is the level just below black belt. So he's very experienced. And now I'll just go to my PowerPoint. I am going to be spending a little time talking about basic physics. Don't get too alarmed by what you see on the blackboard if physics is not your cup of tea. So martial arts generally fall into two categories. The hard style, which people mainly associate with martial arts. That's the kicking, punching style of martial art, karate, taekwondo, in which I have very limited experience. So when it comes to talking about effective punches or kicks, I would defer to my colleague. And then the other category are the softer style, of which Aikido is one, and that's I have some expertise in Aikido, a little. So the other thing that distinguishes the two types of martial art is, generally speaking, in the punching, kicking arts, the movements are not always, but very often linear movements. So punch is a linear movement. So to talk about the applications of physics to those arts, we have to think in terms of linear motion, as opposed to Aikido, where most of the motions are not linear, they're circular. So we have to think about the physics of circular movement. So I will spend a little time either reminding you about some basic physics. I know it was your most popular subject when you were at school. or educating you about some basic physics. Now, the martial artist has not yet been born to make his fist move at a significant fraction of the speed of light, so we don't have to worry about Einsteinian relativistic physics here. The physics of Isaac Newton is all we need to worry about. And here he is. The author of arguably the most important book in the history of science, Philosophia Naturalis Principia Mathematica, the mathematical principles of natural philosophy, in which he lays down the famous laws of motion and clarifies some very important issues concerning the nature of motion, both linear and circular, about which people were kind of confused at the time of Newton. So, for example, there was no clear understanding of the relationship between force and the motion produced by a force. So Aristotle thought if you applied a force F to an object and it moved at speed S, if you double the force, the speed would double. And you think, well, yeah, that kind of makes sense. Well, it's wrong. And Newton corrected that, amongst other things. There was a lot of confusion about the nature of what we call momentum. Come here, you don't have to sit like that. I know what it's like to sit like that for a long time. Your knees really scream. So, confusion about the nature of momentum and its relationship to movement. There's a lot of confusion about the nature of circular motion, for which we have to thank René Descartes, who got the wrong end of the stick when it comes to the relationship between the force that produces circular movement. Newton corrected him. So we have to spend a little time talking about Newtonian physics. And the first thing we'll talk about is the famous three laws of motion. The first law is of not great interest to us in this context of this talk, because it characterizes a state of motion in which there is no net force, there's no external force. So forces can act on an object, but if they all cancel out, there's no net force. And if they all cancel out, Newton's first law says the state of motion can only be one of two types. No motion at rest, or motion in a straight line at constant speed. And if you understand the nature of acceleration, you'll realize both these states of motion are motion with zero acceleration. So it's of no interest to us. The second law is, however, that's just an illustration of the two states of motion. No motion or motion uniformly in a straight line. This is the states of motion covered by the first law. The second law. Now, there is a force acting on an object, unlike the first law. And what does the force do? It produces an acceleration. And Newton says if you double the force, you double the acceleration. And a very simple relationship between the force, the acceleration produced, and the mass of the object. The second most well-known equation in physics, F equals m times a. The force acting on a mass produces an acceleration in proportion to the force. The constant of proportionality is the mass of the object. And what is acceleration? Well, if an object accelerates, its speed changes. And if the speed goes up, it's accelerating. It goes down, it's decelerating. So if you have a change of speed occurring over some particular time, the rate at which the speed changes is what we call acceleration. Right? So I could use this in here, in the second law, and then multiply across by the time involved. And I end up with this equation at the bottom here. The force multiplied by the time over which the force is applied is equal to the change in, and since mass is a constant, I've written this, the change in m times v, and you might recognize m times v as being momentum, linear momentum, the momentum an object has when it is moving in a straight line. All right, so what has this got to do with martial arts? Well, martial arts, you want this to be as high as possible, right? You want to do maximum damage. So you want this to be large, which means this has to be large and this has to be small. So you want to arrange for a large change in momentum occurring over a short period of time to generate a large force. Okay, so hang on to that idea. And this just summarizes what I've just been telling you. And F times time is what we call impulse. However, generating a large force is only part of the story because you want actually a large pressure to be applied during the time of contact, whether it's a fist or a foot. And pressure is force per unit area. So you want a large force, but you want it distributed over a small area. So, Kabir. So I could try a palm strike, but if I do that, the area over which the force is distributed is rather large, right? Or I could try a punch like this, and if that is the contact area, that's not too good either. So bear in mind, I don't train in karate, he does. But this is better. You see this? I turn the fist down, and this is the contact area. That's the optimum if you're punching with a fist. Kabir is going to demonstrate maybe a few punches and a few kicks. He can punch. The other thing you notice about his punch, notice his hip. Because to get a large change in momentum, you want this to be large too, right? So if your punch is this, right? It's just the fist going forward. But if it's this, you bring the fist, you bring your hip forward. Now the whole body is involved. He's kicking with the front part of his foot, not the flat part of his foot. Okay, thank you, Kabir. You don't want to get on the wrong side of this guy. Okay, so we discussed that basically. So as I say, intuitively, martial artists know about these things, but unless they've studied physics, of course, they wouldn't really understand the full implication. And everyone has heard, maybe, of the action-reaction law. When forces are applied, if I push on Kabir, so that's an action, there's a reaction. I feel a force pushing back on me. Action and reaction are equal and opposite. So that's illustrated here. We have two people on an ice rink, a large one and a small one, and they're going to push on each other. So the forces involved are equal and opposite. Action, reaction, equal and opposite. So the large person experiences a force, and since their mass is large, the acceleration will be relatively small. And vice versa, the small person will experience a larger acceleration. So what happens is this. They separate, and the momentum of each one is equal and opposite. This is an example of the law of conservation of linear momentum. So now maybe you understand why, here please, why hockey players don't do this when they get into a fight. Land a punch. As soon as the punch lands, he's accelerating away from me, right? And uh-oh, that's no good, right? So if you want to do real damage, you do what they do. Grab and punch. Okay, so again, law of conservation of linear momentum. Before you pull the trigger, nothing's moving. You pull the trigger, a small object comes out of this end with a certain amount of momentum, and the larger object recoils with a small amount of momentum. Okay, so that's conservation of linear momentum, and it has this conservation law. All right, so moving quickly on to circular motion, which is more appropriate to Aikido, as I mentioned previously. At the time in Newton, there was a lot of confusion about the nature of circular motion. Even some first-year physics students get confused. And the problem is, okay, this is an example of a state of motion which is not covered by the first law. It's neither not rest or linear motion at constant speed, it's circular motion. So this has to be covered by the second law, which means the object going around in a circle is accelerated, there is a force. Now the question is, in what direction does the force move? And Descartes said, well, an object in circular motion is actually experiencing a force tending to push it out. And people speak loosely about centrifugal force. And example I use sometimes in physics classes is the wall of death, you know, at the fun fair. And they have this big cylinder, and you go in and you stand against the wall, and the thing rotates and gets faster and faster, and you feel a great pressure on your chest. And you think, well, if the wall suddenly disintegrated, where would I move? And you get the sense you'd be thrown radially outwards. That's what Descartes thought. And again, it took an Englishman to correct him. Because there's no outward directed force. The force is only directed inwards, right? And if the force is suddenly removed, the object doesn't move out or in. It moves tangential to the circular motion. Right? Now, the other thing about circular motion is if an object is moving like this here, suppose this is a minute hand of a clock, right? It moves through the same angle for every interval of time, 90 degrees every 15 minutes. Right? So you could say the angular speed is 90 divided by 15 is 6 degrees per minute. Right? So this point here on the end will move through the same angle in the same time as the point here in the center of the minute hand. But they don't move through the same distance because this is a larger distance away from the center of the movement. So this would move from here to here, but this would move from there to there. So what is the point of this? This means that the point at the end has to move through a larger distance in the same time as the point in the middle, which means the point at the end is moving faster. So, if you want to have maximum effect with a sword, right, you need to have a largest possible circle of movement of the sword, which guarantees the tip is moving the fastest, and you can do the maximum amount of damage. Aikido, we train with wooden weapons, like this one. And anyone can pick up something like this and swing it around and think, they're actually doing swordsmanship. No, it takes a long time to know how to effectively swing a sword. One thing is, for maximum effect, the radius of the tip has to be as large as possible. So if somebody swings a sword like this, forget it, no good at all. You'll notice what happens there. Shoulders come up, elbows come back. That's no good. Shoulders down, and you extend out. You want the tip to move with maximum velocity, so you need a big swing. The other thing you'll notice is, although that's a big swing and the sword's moving fast, I can bring it to rest rather quickly. A lot of people, if they tried a big, strong swing with something like this, something like that would happen. Right? And if it's a sword, that's a problem. So one thing we are trained to do is to learn how to control the movement. And the secret is in the grip and how you squeeze the grip. So Kabir is a very trusting fellow. Foolish man. So if I take a big swing at him, I can stop before I actually hit him. Because I've learned how to control the sword. The secret is in the grip. The way we hold the sword. If you hold it like a baseball bat from the side, that's going to happen. You have no control. You have to squeeze. This is how we use weapons in our weapons training, but it's exactly the same grip that we use in Aikido. And here I'd like help from somebody in the audience. How about you? So when a magician's doing a show, and in the middle of it he calls for a volunteer, it's a plant, but he always says, "We've never met before, have we?" This is my step-granddaughter. And, okay, right hand, please. If I can get a grip like this on the back of somebody's hand, relax. I wouldn't hurt you. Okay, if it's uncomfortable, you can go down on one knee. So, sword, wrist, relax. Go down. All right, you stand up. Okay, one hand. I can hold it down with one hand.
It's not a fair fight.
All I need, relax, my little finger and my thumb. That's all. So that grip is called Nikajo, please. Yeah. So there's various ways we can torque somebody's wrist. We do it a lot. It's very powerful, very effective. So that's one way. Maybe you come around this way, please. Oh, this, by the way, is Tori's brother. I'm always amazed when I look at this guy. I see him. He's 6'2", 180 pounds, 15 years old. It's amazing. Okay, so this was, you want to feel that?
Oh.
Maybe not. Oh, is this wrist okay?
Yeah, that's good.
All right. So I was using my right hand on the back of his hand to do what we call nikajo. This is sankajo, where I use my left hand. Relax, relax, relax. And now, again, little finger thumb. Move if you have to. So it's very effective, even against a big guy like this. Thank you, Griffin. So, Kabir, please. This venue is not optimum for showing Aikido techniques, as you probably realize. Normally we have a large space and we have mats on the floor. So I could throw him around, and he doesn't mind, because he can do good break falls. He bounces off the mat, stands up, and smiles. Everything's fine. So, but if I was going to, in a technique, Aikido technique, if I was going to use that nikajo movement, it could look something like this. I hope we have enough room here. So please. So in Aikido training, we train in a very stylized, formal way. This is how we start. And I'm going to strike, and he's going to block. He can take it. Twist. Here, I've got his elbow. His shoulders down. That means he has everybody standing up. And I'm not pushing down. I'm using my weight distribution. Right? So I have him under control. The whole idea is to get him under control. Aikido, we don't want to knock him. I don't want to knock him out. I don't want to break his bones. I want to control him. So he is under control. He's still under control. Still under control. Here. Here. That is a very painful pin if you apply it with a lot of pressure, but we don't. In Aikido, I'm just going to put the control on until he says enough. Now, notice, if I'm back here, he doesn't feel very much. It's kind of comfortable. But if I just move a little bit, that's all it takes. And, you know, if he's a bad guy, I can sit here for a long time controlling him. Of course, if he's a bad guy, I wouldn't stop here. I'd really lean into it. So that's one way, one technique where we use nikajo. Sankajo, maybe here. So now, to demonstrate that technique, we both started right side, right leg forward. This one, I'm going to be left side forward. He's right side. In Aikido, we use a lot of pivoting movements. Hence the reference to circular movement. So maybe come over here a little bit. Okay, so now what's going to happen here? And the first time I struck him and he blocked. Now he's going to strike me, I'm going to block. Now, left hand. Left hand. Sankajo. Until he's here. Now I'm going to take him down. Punch. Right hand. I want him to move this way. And same kind of control here. So that's an example of how we would use Sankajo. Thank you, Kabir. All right, so yes, just to come back to the slides for a minute. There is no outward force, there's only an inward force. Students get kind of confused about that because when you say, well, there's an inwardly directed force acting on an object in circular movement, why doesn't it move inward? You have to understand something about vectors. Yes?
Why doesn't he, when you're doing that, why doesn't he strike you with his other hand or his leg?
Good question. Well, okay, you're talking about this movement here. Well, if I just keep doing this, he's not going to punch me. He's not going to punch me with this hand. And if he tries to punch me, I take him down and control him. Yeah. Thank you.
Are there ways to break your grip?
I beg your son?
Are there ways to break off your grip?
Yeah. We study ways in which breaking off, if he grabs my wrist here, right, tight. Most people would do this. I do this, right? There's all kinds of ways you can escape from double-handed grip. If I won't, but if I wanted to throw him, if he's pulling, I could cut on the inside of his wrist with my right hand, the outside with my left hand. In Aikido, just relax for a minute. In our throwing techniques, the first idea is to take their balance, destabilize them. Right? That's what we want to do. We want to get them off balance. Then you can throw them or pin them. So this is getting a little bit ahead of ourselves here. Just to come back to the physics for a minute. Just relax. So, what causes a rotation? What is the angular equivalent of force in linear movement? The answer is torque. And what is a torque? Well, I think I have a slide. We'll just skip onto that. We'll skip through this. Oh, here. We have the seesaw. And here's a person at this end. The gravity's pulling them down with a force acting here. What torque is the product of this force and the distance between the force and the point about which the rotation is going to occur. And you may intuitively know this from trying to get the wheel nuts off your wheel of your car, right? If you have a long bar with a grip on the end, you don't try and unscrew the nut by holding your hands close to the end of the thing. You hold it close to the, close to the nut itself. You hold the other end because you're maximizing that distance R and you're maximizing the torque. Okay, so a torque will produce an angular acceleration. It's the circular equivalent of linear movement. So there is a relationship between torque. Here it is. This is torque. This is something I'll talk about in just a minute. And this is angular acceleration. So it looks like F equals ma, but this is torque. This is the angular acceleration produced by the torque. And this quantity, I, is what's called moment of inertia. Mass is an objective property of an object. Moment of inertia is not. Moment of inertia depends on two things. We're talking about an object which is in circular movement, an object which is rotating. Well, if it's a sphere, of course, you can rotate a sphere in any direction. If it's a cylinder, you could make it rotate like this, or you could make it rotate end over end. And the moment of inertia is different for each type of rotation. It depends on the axis of rotation. But it also depends on how the mass of the object is distributed relative to the axis of rotation. And the classic example here is, everybody's seen it. You've been in Canada, everyone's seen the figure skater doing a pirouette. And at the beginning of a pirouette, the ice skater holds their hands out. So their mass is distributed at a large distance from the axis of rotation. And the angular speed is relatively low. As soon as they do this, they speed up. And what's happened is that the moment of inertia has gone down, so the angular acceleration goes up. And there's a conservation law that applies to angular momentum, just as there is for linear momentum. So to speed up rotational motion, you need to reduce the moment of inertia. So Again, Kabir, please. Here's another response to an attack where my weight is on my left, right? So he comes in. I'm going to pivot and shift and take him down and pin. So if you just watch my hands when I do that, so he came in, I blocked, pivot, my hands are coming in, shift, and my hands are closer to my body. In other words, during that movement, my moment of inertia is going down. So he rotates faster and faster as I take him down. Okay. Let's see what else we have here. I've forgotten. Oh, yeah. So if you want to tip a crane over, a box over, you need to create a torque which is going to cause clockwise rotation. And Newton showed that for a symmetric object like a box, you can consider the mass to be completely centered at the geometric center of the box. So the force of gravity is acting down here in this case. And this is the little r in the expression for the torque. But the rotation is going to occur in this direction. So if you just pick up a box a little bit and let go, it's going to fall down. How do you get it to tip over? You have to move the center of mass beyond that vertical line. So now the center of mass is beyond that vertical line. Now you have a torque which is acting in the clockwise direction. And the thing will fall over. So, Kabir, please. There's all kinds of ways we can react to a punch. The basic idea in Aikido is get out of the way. Don't stand there and take it. Because you've seen how hard he can punch. So rule number one, get out of the way. So he tries to punch me here. That's all you need. That's all you need to get out of the way. But having got out of the way, you want to execute some movement which will be to his disadvantage. So, so something maybe like this. So he comes in. Oh! We'll do it slowly. So he comes in slowly, slow down. He comes to slow down. I'm out of the way. His fist comes in. I position myself to take his balance here. And if I can move his center of mass beyond his heel, it's a law of physics. He's got to go down. I won't complete the movement. But if I were to complete the movement, it would result in a fairly hard throw. Whoa! From here, my hips go down, and I extend out, and he'll go down hard. And if his head drops back and it's a hard floor, that could be the end of it. How are we doing for time? A few more minutes, maybe. Aikido movements can be quite effective against knife attacks. So if he's going to make a slashing movement with his right here, one of the principles of Aikido is use their movements against them. So if he makes a slashing attack, I'm going to try and blend in with his movement to his disadvantage. So he strikes here, here. Whoa. If I finished that, I could have thrown him, but I'm going to not do that. I'm going to try and disarm him. So he comes in, block here, step through, crank his wrist here, bring my weight forward here, crank his wrist enough. It's all right. It's all right. I crank the wrist enough, I can get him to drop the knife. But a throw, I won't do the throw, but the throw would look something like this. here, slowly, step through. Now, changing, what's going to happen now? A sword cut from here, there, except I've got his wrist. So what's he going to do? He's going to fly through the air and land on his back. And of course, if it was a proper dojo, I could do that and he'd be quite happy. He likes to fly through the air. And we spent a lot of time perfecting breakfalls because in the early stages, I'm sure it was true for Kabir, you know, you're very nervous about doing rolling breakfalls. I could do one, but I won't do it. Where you're thrown and you extend out and you roll over your arm, you roll over your back, and with enough angular momentum, you can stand up. But in the beginning, people are very nervous. I'm going to hurt myself. Oh. And the worst thing you can do is stiffen up like that. That's the worst thing you can do. So if you're really threatened, you know, somebody really threatens you, the worst thing is this. Oh, he's going to kill me. If your body tightens up like that, Aikido is no good to you. One of the most difficult things about Aikido is maintaining a relaxed body. When your body's relaxed, you can do these big circular movements. Throw, boom, you know? But you've got to be fairly relaxed. I'm not sure how much else I want to. We talked about that. Talked about the ice skater. So that's the end of the PowerPoint. Kabir, do you want to add anything to what I've said?
I think you've covered all of it.
Oh, okay. I could go on and on for a long time about Aikido. I notice later on today there's a talk about aging. And I should tell you, I never heard of Aikido until I was 45. And in a period of about 18 months, I finally managed to stop smoking. I became a vegetarian. And I took up Aikido. It's made a big difference in my life. And I'd recommend it. I teach it here in the kinesiology department. It's a 2-credit course. And I teach it from September to December. And my birthday happens to be in November. So the class after my birthday, I show off a little bit. I do rolling breakfalls. I stand up and I say, okay, so it's my birthday last week. How old am I? Last time, the nearest somebody got to my real age was 63. I had to tell them, no, you're out by a decade. I'm 53. Okay, so any questions, any comments? Yeah.
How does that stomach punch work out with, say, a Kevlar vest on someone?
With a Kevlar vest?
You change your tactics suddenly from the punch to the stomach to the Kevlar vest. Will that be effective enough that you can carry it on through and down?
Are you saying how effective is a Kevlar vest in protecting a punch?
Yeah.
Have you ever punched somebody with a Kevlar vest?
I can't say I have, no.
It's always the first time.
Yeah, yeah.
If someone were wearing Kevlar vest, I don't think I'd be aiming for the stomach. I'd aim for something like the head, which is unprotected.
And these karate demonstrations you see, the people, they cheat a little bit because very often you see them, they have a whole stack of boards like this, 1 inch thick, but then they have supports between the boards and they'll have another one, another one, and if the guy knows what he can do, he can punch through all of them. But you say, okay, if I take these three and put them together, I can't. Yeah? Well, they could grab, say my wrists. So he's either pushing or pulling. So here I'm going to shift. I'm going to circle up. Hang on. There's all kinds of things I can do from here. I could cross step back. Here, you've seen this before, third control. Now I'm in charge, right? Bear hug, same kind of thing, a bit lower. Here. That kind of movement will release somebody if they're grabbing. If they're pushing, I step forward, same idea. Here. Here. Pivot, shift, take him down. So we do learn escapes from grabs from behind. He could grab my collar from behind. So he's grabbing, pulling. I go with this pull. This way. I come back and follow through and throw him. Thanks. Yeah.
Two questions. What age do you recommend to start this in terms of the bottom end?
The bottom end.
Yeah, for kids.
Well, my instructor, he doesn't anymore, but he used to have kids' classes. It used to be a lot of fun. Of course, they wouldn't pay attention. They'd just bounce around. But some of them were, little guys, 4 or 5 years old.
And the second question is, how much of the disadvantages of torn meniscus in doing Aikido? Because you were talking about pivoting.
I've had that. I've had a torn ACL. You mean in the knee? Yeah, I've had that from doing Aikido. But I had an operation, and I've been great ever since. I don't want to fool you. I do get aches and pains, but it doesn't stop me. I keep going. Yes.
You are also an astronomer. So how do these two things come together in your life?
Well, I did dabble in observational astronomy for a few years before I discovered Aikido. So, that's a good question. I'm going to have to think about that one.
What prompted you to take up martial arts?
Well, what prompted me to take up the martial arts? I had a midlife, I wouldn't say crisis, but reevaluation. And of course, when I was a smoker, I was convinced I would never see past 60, because 2 packs a day for 20 years, But that was a long time ago. I found it a lot easier to give up meat and fish than nicotine. A lot easier. And, I thought I was 45. I thought, you better stop abusing your body and take care of it. Excuse me, take care of it. Yes.
It seems like the circular motion trumps linear motion in a lot of tactics, like whether he comes at you with punches or kicks or whatever, you have an out. So is there a particular martial art that an elite practitioner would beat an Aikido practitioner that you didn't have an out?
Well,
Maybe
that's
like
a good,
circular
yeah.
motion can get you out of almost anything.
Well, that's a very good question. And on YouTube, there's all kinds of debates, karate guy versus Aikido guy, and so on and so on. But one thing to keep in mind is that in UFC, kung fu, karate, what have you, the two guys, they dance around each other looking for an opening, but that's not the way it works in Aikido. In Aikido, you want the guy to come at you as fast as possible, because Aikido techniques were developed to respond to battleground warfare, where somebody was coming at you with a sword, right? And you get out of the way and do something, disarm them. The idea is use their momentum against them. So it's a different, Aikido techniques were designed for a different mode of combat, which is why, students say to me, hey, I never see this stuff on UFC. Why not? If you want to see it, you see one of those cheesy movies that Steven Seagal made. Because that's Aikido, and he's good. He was good. He's now 350 pounds. I wouldn't want to tangle with him. But
So we were talking here about the body, about the physics, but obviously for our lay person, any
Very good question. Because as I mentioned earlier on, the normal reaction, somebody, threatens you, raise their fist, they're cursing you, what have you, you freeze. Think, oh, he's going to hurt me. So freezing the body is no good. But having a tense mind is also no good. In Aikido, after you've trained for a number of years, you come to realize how important the mental aspect is as well as the physical aspect. Because you can move, technically you can do a good technique, but if your mind is tense, if your mind is somewhere else, you're really not in the moment. The technique is not as good. So relaxed body, relaxed mind is optimum. Yeah.
What's your purpose of doing this? Is it just for exercise, self-protection, or just...
Why do I do it?
Yeah, recreation, yeah, that's right.
Why do I do it?
Yeah, what's your main aim of...
I do it because I like it. I enjoy it. And for a long time I thought, I'm really not very good at this. If somebody came at me and I tried an Aikido technique, I'm going to get hammered. But that was a while ago. Now I'm a bit more confident. And if I had to use it, I think I could use it effectively. Now, think about Aikido, pure self-defense. Aikido people are not aggressive. Right? We learn to respond to somebody else's aggression. That's the thing I like about Aikido. And there's a social aspect to it. I go to the dojo, I meet my buddies, and afterwards we go and have a few beers, and And the training, I like the training because it's non-competitive. That's another thing about Aikido. Aikido is not one of the well-known martial arts. Everyone's heard of karate, kung fu, and what have you. You see these competitions, right? Aikido, no competitions at all. Because it's not about ego.
I was just going to mention, I studied Aikido years ago.
Yes.
What appealed to me was the philosophy.
Yes.
It's actually to disarm aggression.
Yes.
So when someone comes at you with force, you use their force against them. So
Exactly.
the harder they come, the harder you fall.
Exactly.
And the idea is, even more how Yoshiba said, when you meet an opponent, all things come into focus. So you actually are relaxed.
Yes.
And you let the situation deal with itself.
Right.
So let their aggression work against them, and you just let the situation develop.
Exactly.
And when you're in a calm state of mind, that's when you're more able to react. It's like
Yeah.
instinctive.
Yes. Very good. But at the higher levels, when you test, you have to defend against more than one attacker. When we do testing, you have to demonstrate basic movements, some weapons kata, techniques with a partner, and then a freestyle. So he comes at you with various attacks. You have to defend against that. And then, right at the end, 2 attackers. In some styles of Aikido, 3, 4 attackers. And you have to deal with them. And as you say, you've got to stay focused and centered. And people say, well, the Aikido guy is like the center of a hurricane, where everything's calm. And the other guys are being thrown around all over the place. Yeah.
Have you ever done any work with the business management group yet?
Have I? No, I haven't. Should I? Do they pay well?
The fundamental philosophy of taking someone else's energy and turning them against it, if you talk it in the strategic sense in business, I think there's a whole new world there.
Okay, I'm available for seminars. Where's our organizer? Are we all right for time?
We have about 5 minutes.
Okay.
Is Aikido related in any way to Tai Chi?
Well, Tai Chi, yeah, Tai Chi is a martial art, although the movements are very slow.
There's different types of Tai Chi. I know more. There can be aggressive versus...
From what little I know about Tai Chi, I mean, it's well, there's a basic movement that we do in Aikido. At the beginning of every class, we practice these basic movements. Do we want to do them, maybe? We'll show you the whole set of basic movements that we do. I'll do the movement with the sword. I hope we have enough space here. And well, let's use this space over here in the corner. And Kabir will do the movement barehanded. They say that Aikido is swordsmanship without the sword. All our movements, as you might have gathered by now, those hand movements are all derivative from sword movements. So I'm not sure we have enough room here, but we'll try. So we do this set of basic movements at the beginning of every class. So this is called cross-step in body change. "95-degree pivot." Elbow power number 1. Turn shift. Number 2. After class exercise, we don't have enough room. We'll leave it there. But the movements are all circular in form. Yes.
I have a question. Do you know if this Aikido is being trained in police force?
In Japan, I think the Tokyo Riot Police used to train in Aikido, but also Jodo, because after the war, the Americans prohibited Japanese from using swords, so the police used this. It's a simple stick. It's called a jo. There's a whole martial art devoted to this, which I also train in. So we learn how to do big strikes, just like the sword. The nice thing about the Jodo is you can use both ends. So you can strike, thrust, and so on and so on. I won't do any Jodo movements, but yeah. I'm not sure. Over here, I don't think the police. I know some individual policemen have come and trained in Aikido, but it's not a requirement. Yes.
I just wanted to say that I took Tai Chi for many years, and I had a very good teacher.
Yes.
And everything that you talked about here is what we learned.
Yes.
There's a great similarity
Right.
between the two, just in a slower form.
Sure.
And we also did sword, saber, and
Right.
staff.
Yes.
So
Yes.
very similar. And the
Well,
same-
Tai Chi is a recognized martial art. What else was I going to say? Oh, some people describe Aikido as Zen in motion. So keep a centered, focused mind as you're moving around. Yes.
Like when you take Tai Chi, you can practice individually
Yes.
yourself.
Yes.
But when you do this martial art,
Yes.
Aikido,
Yes.
can you practice by yourself alone in your own space?
Well, you can do the basic movements. We didn't show all of them, but you can do them by yourself. You can do sword practice. We use some kata, which is individual sword practice, but then we also do practice with a partner, so both sides has a sword. But the weapons practice you can do individually. But we also train in a partner sword to sword. So, for example, let's do a wasa yokum. Hey. So you're going to strike. So what happens there? He strikes. Of course, I don't just stand there. I avoid it. Position myself to counter his strike. So he comes in. And there's quite a few others. We won't do them. But the reason we train weapon to weapon is to develop good sense of timing. It's very important. In any martial art, timing is important. But also a sense of space, what we call mai. Optimum distance between the two people involved. So, for example, here's another Aikido movement. He's going to grab on the back of my hand here, and he's pulling. Aikido, no tug of war. What's the point? He's bigger. He's bigger and stronger than I am. But I could do this movement. And that works. This doesn't work. Right? Too close. This doesn't work. Too far away. This works. Thank you. You'll notice his arm had an arc of a circle to it. This is very important in Aikido. We have to maintain that form of our arm because we never do this. We never have sharp corners and we never do this. Sam, maybe you can help me. Oh, you're bigger than I thought you were. And stronger. Oh, I'm in trouble here. Turn me. Okay. So put your two hands on my elbow joint. Elbow joint, yeah. Can you bend my arm? He's not really trying. Yeah, now he's trying. No good. Big, strong guy. I'm an old man. He can't bend my arm. Thanks. The unbendable arm of Aikido. And it works because, Kabir, it works. Don't ask me about the biomechanics, I have no idea, but it works. If I extend my fingers, I extend out, that makes my arm strong. So he tries to bend my arm. No, okay, relax. If I do this, look. Now. The weakest of all is that I make a fist. No problem at all. But if you extend your fingers out, it makes your arm very strong. And you need that, thanks to Kabir, to do these rolling break falls that we do. I'm tempted to do one, but I'll resist. You need that unbendable arm because when we roll down the arm. If your arm is bendable, this happens. Bang, bang, bang. And you hurt yourself. Yes?
What made you choose this martial art over the other martial arts like karate or judo or what have you?
Well, I felt I was maybe a little old at 45. Aikido had a lot of appeal. Somebody mentioned the philosophy behind Aikido. That appealed to me a lot, the way we train. We train in a mutually supportive way, so we're not fighting each other. When Kabir and I train, I'm helping him develop his technique. He's helping me. We're not fighting. But once you get good technique and you get involved with the fight, you could probably use it. Yeah.
Is it considered one of the newer forms of martial arts, and as well as the philosophy behind this?
Yes.
Usually train within your mechanic learning, or is it a formal philosophy discipline that's taught in Aikido?
Well, there is a philosophy behind it. Some instructors emphasize it more than others. And Washiba Sensei, the founder, was very much into a form of Shinto, which people in the West don't have a lot of interest in. And some people get the wrong idea. They think there's a religious aspect to Aikido. We do a lot of formal bowing and what have you. People misunderstand that. It's showing respect. That's why we bow. It has no religious connotation. But the philosophy where you're helping each other develop techniques, that everything is cooperative, it's non-competitive, and in the fullness of time, it does have some effect on your attitude to other people. Because if you start with a lot of aggression, over the years you lose it. Yeah.
Legal requirement. Suppose your life is in danger, or you have to use Aikido.
Yes.
Is there some kind of legal requirement that you have to follow through if you have to use it against aggressor?
Do I need a license to practice it? Oh, if somebody attacked me, I say, hey, watch, I'm third-degree black belt. What do you think you're doing? No, nothing like that.
I think his question may be that if you take this big guy down and
Yes.
you disjoint his arm,
Yes.
I just wonder what the boundary of it.
Oh,
Will you
if
be
I
in trouble?
broke his arm, would I be in trouble?
How far can you go?
That's a good question. I'm not sure the answer to that. I know this as telling stories out of school, but when Steven Seagal trained in Japan, he did what nobody else I know of would do. He would go out late at night in the back streets of Tokyo and pick on people. Of course, he's 6'4". The average Japanese is, 5'3". But he would want to test his techniques. But that's a very bad attitude.
I think I could probably let you guys go all day.
Okay.
So I just wanted to thank you all for coming and thank both Professor Jeffers
Kabir?
and